Alright guys, welcome back to my channel for more gaming updates, and today we gonna discuss about very beautiful upcoming game from LARIAN Studios, Baldur's Gate 3, and in this video, we have discussed every news and rumors regarding this game, revealed so far, so let's get started. Baldur's Gate 3 is a resurrection of the classic party-based RPG series set in the Forgotten Realms. It's being modernized by LARIAN Studios, previously responsible for the excellent Divinity Original Sin 2. Bringing it in line with the current edition of the Dungeons & Dragons rules. It's also become turn-based, unlike the original games, which helped popularize real-time with pause combat as a compromise between Diablo-style action and squad-level tactics back in the day. The early access version of Baldur's Gate 3, cutting off at the end of the game's first act, was released in October of 2020, and the 2 years since have brought a continuous slate of updates. In the form of extra playable races and classes, there are options for good and evil playthroughs, as well as shades of grey in between, as you negotiate between druids and refugee tieflings with fiendish blood, make your way through a goblin camp, delve into the Underdark, deal with a devil, and defuse inter-party conflict between your 5 recruitable companions. Baldur's Gate 3 can be enjoyed solo, or in online co-op with up to 4 players, as you all escape from tentacle-faced mind flayers, and try to find a cure for the parasites they've implanted in your brain. Baldur's Gate has a long and venerable history among PC gamers, RPG lovers, and Dungeons & Dragons fans alike. The original won widespread praise when it released in 1998, and remains a highlight of developer BioWare's early days, when it was still heavily influenced by tabletop RPGs. While the title spawned numerous spin-offs, expansions, and remastered editions, the core series has remained dormant since the launch of Baldur's Gate 2 in 2000. After decades of waiting, however, fans can rejoice at the return of the franchise with the upcoming Baldur's Gate 3. Developed and published by LARIAN Studios, which created Divinity, the long-awaited sequel looks to bring the classic style of the IP into a new era. It features a new story housed in the D&D setting Forgotten Realms and gameplay that blends old-school role-playing rules and new video game innovations. Baldur's Gate 3 will leave early access for a full release in August 2023. As announced at the Game Awards, it's the most definitive release window we've gotten for the game's full release, and while LARIAN founder Sven Vink said he's reasonably confident about the timeframe, it's still not fully set in stone. Despite hopes for release in 2022, LARIAN had been setting expectations that was unlikely. An early access retrospective video from a D&D Direct event confirmed a 2023 launch window, asking fans to come along in 2023. When the game releases, the finished version of Baldur's Gate 3 will be on GOG as well as Steam. While Baldur's Gate 3 has been available in early access on Steam and GOG since 2020, there was no word for years about when the full version of the game might launch. This finally changed with the debut of a new trailer at the 2022 Game Awards. This segment didn't provide an exact date, but it did give fans a general time frame for when the title will release. It's now official that the full version of Baldur's Gate 3 will drop in August 2023. This may seem like quite a long while, but compared to the 3 years fans who first jumped on the early access will have waited, it's not too bad. When it does launch, it will be available for both Windows and Mac OS. Fans will have the option to grab the regular version or a special collector's edition that comes with lots of goodies and extras. Our latest look at Baldur's Gate 3 as a final product comes courtesy of Jeff Keighley's 2022 festivities at the Game Awards. Alongside shots of combat with a menagerie's worth of Forgotten Realms foes, we get our August 2023 release window for the game's emergence from early access, as well as the reveal of returning characters Juhara and Minsk, who we now know as being voiced by Critical Role's Matt Mercer. LARIAN Studios has offered fans a few trailers since the announcement of Baldur's Gate 3. The initial trailer focuses on a knight gruesomely transforming into a mind flayer, one of the scarier monsters of D&D. LARIAN followed this up with another trailer that shows off the full opening of the game, offering a more in-depth look at the mind flayers who appear to serve as the main antagonists. LARIAN dropped a third trailer that announces the early access phase of the game. This trailer reveals the predicament that the player character will face at the start of narrative. Infected with a mind flayer tadpole, they are doomed to have their brain consumed and turn into a mind flayer themselves, unless they can find a cure. In addition to revealing the release window, the Game Awards trailer offers more details about the sequel itself, introducing a few party members, environments, and gameplay. It even previews the return of fan-favorite character, Minsk, from the original Baldur's Gate. What we've played so far is very promising. It's a slightly anarchic sandbox at times, letting you sneak around pushing people off ledges, or dropping boulders on their heads, like you're some fantasy hitman. Which is great. The story doesn't really have time to get going though, and you'll finish just as clueless about what's going on with mind flayers, and what you're going to do about this pesky tadpole that's been inserted into your head. There are, of course, bugs. It's being patched on the regular, though that means choosing between a new patch that wipes your saves or sticking with an older, buggier build. The full game may not release until the summer of 2023. But prospective buyers can still get a taste of Baldur's Gate 3, now through early access. To play, one need only purchase the title for $60 on GOG or Steam and fire it up. Those contemplating giving early access a try should know that Baldur's Gate 3 remains in development, with bugs still present, and only some content available. Currently, early access users can only dive into the first act, and choose from a limited selection of fantasy races and classes for a player character. While LARIAN Studios has said this will still provide around 30 hours of content, not everyone will want to play a limited version that's not fully polished. Further, save times created in early access will not carry over when the full game releases, meaning players will lose all progress made. Those who want to see how a game comes together over time, or who just can't wait to get a taste of Baldur's Gate 3, should consider early access. Everyone else will likely benefit by waiting for the completed product to drop. While some aspects will change, the game's Steam page and experiences from early access provide a good idea of what to expect from Baldur's Gate 3. In many ways, LARIAN Studios looks to honor the legacy of the series and D&D in general. Players will create a character with lots of customization, class, and background options and adventure across the world, with a party of companions, in a top-down third-person view. The follow-up will feature a massive story that incorporates a large cast of characters, lots of areas to explore, and important choices to make that will impact the narrative. LARIAN Studios has also drawn on its experience with the Divinity series and updated elements of the gameplay to create a smoother, more satisfying loop. Baldur's Gate 3 will be different from D&D in some key ways, and the franchise will switch from the traditional real-time, with pauses to turn-based combat. Despite these changes, it appears that the entry will pay tribute to the spirit and style of the original. Fans of LARIAN Studios' past work and the Baldur's Gate IP should all have something to look forward to here. Baldur's Gate 3 tells a new story set in the current era of the Forgotten Realms. The Mind Flayer psychic, squid-faced alien tyrants have found a way to once again travel between worlds, and are invading. The player character and main companions are all infected with a parasitic tadpole that should turn them into mind flayers, but for some reason the process isn't working like it normally does. One of the key quests is to find out more information about the tadpoles and get them removed. Though the party doesn't appear to be transforming into mind flayers right away, the tadpole still has an effect. You can link minds with other people with tadpoles and get some other benefits, but the more you use your power, the easier you'll be to control when you happen across another mind flayer. The mind flayers are an ancient and terrifying force in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. They have powerful psionic abilities, can mind control other sentient beings, and like to feed on their brains for sustenance. They frequently keep slaves to do their bidding and serve as a convenient snack should they feel a bit peckish. Mind flayers have plenty of enemies though, and at the start of Baldur's Gate 3, we see a battle between mind flayers, demons, and Githyanki, all taking place in and around a ship that's rapidly falling apart. The Githyanki in particular feature prominently in Baldur's Gate 3, since one of your first companions is a Githyanki fighter who was captured by mind flayers. The city of Baldur's Gate will feature of course, but the whole city won't be available to the player, only relevant sections. It's still a bit of a mystery, as we've only seen it briefly in trailers and cutscenes. In the early access version, you won't reach the city, though you will see it from a distance during a dream. Similarly to Divinity, Original Sin 2, Baldur's Gate 3 lets you choose to make an entirely custom character or one of its preset cast. It's a good option to have, but Divinity OS 2's main characters were pretty widely considered the better option, as they had more personalized dialogue and a connection to the story. Larian said in an AMA on Reddit that in BG3, custom characters have a much stronger connection to the world and the main arc of the story. We're confident that you won't feel shortchanged in terms of narrative breadth and depth if you choose to play as a custom character. When we say there are serious consequences to your choices, we really mean it. As you move through your adventure, you'll discover quest lines and stories that relate directly to the character you're role-playing and the things that you've done. When it comes to races, humans, halflings, dwarves, elves, half-elves, Drow, gnomes, tieflings, and Githyanki are currently playable. Larian is being stingy about adding more in early access, but half-orcs and dragonborn will also be options at launch, if not sooner. Here's all the specifics specifics about the Baldur's Gate 3 races that are playable so far. Classes are obviously important too. The stories are very much tied to class at times, senior writer Adam Smith told us in our first look at Baldur's Gate 3. Class is such a part of identity in D&D, in a way that it wasn't in Divinity Original Sin 2. Larian says that in the full release of Baldur's Gate 3, we'll be able to play as any class from the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition ruleset. At the moment, you can play as one of 11 classes: Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Warlock, Wizard, Druid, Sorcerer, Barbarian, Bard, and the most recently added Paladin. As Swenvink has said, we're not going to necessarily put the classes that are easiest to make first into early access, we're putting the ones that are interesting for us also, to see what the community does with it. You'll need to make a custom character during early access, as the bespoke origin characters are currently off limits, but you can recruit 5 of them into your party.